He was the lead guitarist for the groups The Cherry People, Bux and Angel from the late 60s to the early 80s. He's now back with a new solo album and tour. Our guest this week is Punky Meadows on the VVN Music Podcast. Hi, and welcome to episode 30 of the VVN Music Podcast. I'm Roger Wenk, and our guest today is guitarist Punky Meadows. Punky started his career playing in Washington, D.C. area bands in the mid to late 60s, including the English Settlers, who became the Cherry People. When Meadows left the band in 1972, he formed the band Daddy Warbucks, which eventually became just Bux. In the mid-70s, Meadows moved again to form Angel, a band that was discovered and championed by KISS member Gene Simmons. They signed to Casablanca Records, where they were marketed as the antithesis of KISS, dressed in pure white while Simmons and company were in black. Between 1975 and 1980, Angel released 6 albums, but with the downfall of Casablanca, they ended up going their separate ways, with Meadows retiring from the business for almost 3 decades. Then came 2016 when he made his comeback with his first solo album, Fallen Angel. Punky is about to go out on the road for a tour in support of that album. Whereabouts are you located?
I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina right now.
Is that where you call home, or?
Yeah, that's where I call home, but I'm really based out of New Jersey. I mean, that's where my band is, and that's where I fly back and forth all the time between here and New Jersey. I'm actually leaving Wednesday to go up there to rehearse, and then we're going to head out to the West Coast.
You have a short tour coming up of mainly the West Coast, correct?
Yeah, we're doing Las Vegas, San Diego, and then L.A., and then we're coming back, and then we're doing New York and Poughkeepsie, New York, and BB King's in New York City again, which is going to be fun. It's going to be great. Can't wait.
Does it feel good to be back on the road?
No, it feels great. I love playing, of course. You know, I'm a musician, guitar player, and the album has done so well. Everybody loves the album, and so it's fun to play that for everybody. And also, we're playing a lot of Angel classics too for the fans. So yeah, it's great. I love it.
You left the business after the breakup of Angel in the early 80s, and it was, around 3 decades before you truly came back. What made you decide to try music again?
Well, I mean, I never stopped playing. When I left L.A. in 1988, after Angel was over, and I just tired of the music business, you know. I mean, I love music and playing, but the music business I was just tired of that, you know. It's kind of a cutthroat business, a lot of sharks out there, and you're just a kid, you know. You get taken advantage of and stuff when you're young like that. But anyway, so I left and gave up music business, but I opened up my own businesses on the East Coast, back in Washington, D.C., and the Virginia, Maryland area there. And I was really very, very successful with that. So I had good businesses, and then I also got into the stock market as well. I had property, I bought some properties and things like that. And then after I did that for about 11 years, I decided to sell the business and just go in the stock market full time. I sold the business and the properties, went in the stock market full time, and retired, and then moved from there down here to North Carolina. And then I guess about 3 years after, I guess it must be about, maybe 9 or 10 years ago, I guess, I went onto Facebook for the first time, and I started seeing all these Angel fans and people that just loved Angel. They were posting pictures of they were Angel fan pages and things like that. And it's funny because when you're playing back before social media, you'd play in a town and people would say, "Hey man, we love you guys. We think you guys are great," and you would say, "Thanks a lot, man." Then you'd move on to the next town, and the same thing would happen. But you would never hear from these people again, really, because you don't see them anymore. So. I didn't realize how many fans they really were, Angel fans there were, and also, we didn't make a lot of money, but at least we made a lot of people happy, and people would say, "Hey, man, you're my inspiration. You're the reason I play guitar today," and that sort of thing, So I was really intrigued with the whole thing again. They would post pictures, and of course the pictures look cool too, so I kind of fell in love with that whole thing all over again. But I never stopped writing or playing. I mean, every night I play my guitar. To this day, I play my guitar every single night when I'm watching TV, and nobody can watch TV with me because I play all the commercials and with the soundtracks on the TV, and I'm always writing things, and I have a little tape recorder that I put things on when I come up with a cool idea or whatever. So I never stopped playing, but it wasn't in the music business. And then about 2 years ago, I got an offer to do a interview with a Rat Radio and Keith Roth out of New Jersey, New York, and so when I did that interview, it was broadcast worldwide, all over the world. And so when I actually did the interview, their whole website crashed because so many people were tuning in to hear me. And I was pretty dumbfounded by that. I didn't know that was going to be such a big deal, you know. And so they finally got the website back up, and people got to hear the interview. And afterwards, you know, everybody on Facebook was writing how, you know, what a cool interview it was and this and that. And Keith Roth, the DJ who did the interview, said in all his 17 years of interviewing everybody from Robert Plant to, you know, to Keith Richards and on down, he'd never seen that happen. So I was pretty dumbfounded myself about that. That was really cool. But anyway, so then I started getting all sorts of record deals, and Keith Roth and Danny Aniello, part of Main Man Records, you know, offered me a deal. And since they were cool guys, and I've known Danny for a long time, he's a friend of mine, I decided to go with Main Man Records, and we recorded the album. Danny flew down here to Charlotte. We wrote a bunch of songs together. And we both love the same kind of music. You know, we both love pop music, but we also like it to be, you know, heavy too, you know, like power pop more or less, you know, because I like really good melodies and songs that you can actually sing along with. I mean, I like a good song, you know. I can sit around and write heavy metal riffs all day long. You know, it's an easy thing to do, but to write a good, you know, 3 or 4 minute pop song that you know has, you know, singable verses and pre-choruses and singable choruses, and also, you know, melodic guitar solos as well too. It's a lot more difficult, you know. There's a lot of great guitar players out there, but they can't write a song to save their ass, you know. I'm sorry to say, but you know, so we recorded the album and it came out great. It's gotten rave reviews all over the world. It charted on 4 Billboard charts, which is great. I mean, that's for nowadays because everybody's streaming and stuff. You know, people aren't buying records, but they were buying my record, which is great. And like I said, it's gotten rave reviews all over the world. You know, it's a very diversified record, which is cool. I mean, there's something for everybody on there, and it's, you know, it's a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun. And so then we did our first gig at our record release party at BB King's in New York, and that went off great. It was sold out, and people loved it. My very first time playing in so many years of it, so I was pretty nervous because I hadn't played in a long time. So, but it went off good. And it's been great ever since. We've just been, you know, getting ready to do some more touring and behind this record, and then we'll record another record next year.
It is amazing and really had to be gratifying to hit that number of Billboard charts, because since they started including the streaming data in there, I've found that a lot of veteran and classic artists are able to sell a lot of product and it looks really good on the sales only charts, and then all of a sudden they're way down because only the brand new acts get a lot of streaming units added to things. So to be up there on those charts, that is quite an accomplishment.
Yeah, it really was. We were excited about the record. We knew we had a good record because we, you know, I mean, you know, when I would record Angel stuff, I'd listen to it back once or twice, you know, after we recorded it. But I wouldn't pay much attention to it again after that because, you know, I was playing it every night and that sort of thing. But this record, I actually like to listen to all the time. It has a really good vibe to it. Like I said, the songs are all singable, yet it kicks ass all over the place. And it's the kind of record, you know, you put in your car and turn it up while you're playing with your windows down, you know. And it's a good record, so I'm really proud of it, you know. And Danny and I produced it, wrote all the songs, and arranged it, did all the album cover work ourselves. So we did it all ourselves, and so I'm very proud of it. So it's exciting, it really is.
I also understand that it did quite well in both Europe and especially in Japan.
Yeah, I got a deal because of that. I got a deal in Europe and also a deal in Japan. And we've been getting in all these big rock websites and stuff. You know, they have the best 100 records of 2016. We've been in the top 10 in every one of those, and we even got number 1 in a couple too, beating out Cheap Trick and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, Cheap Trick had all that publicity behind him, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and all that kind of stuff. You know, so we actually got ranked higher than them, which was pretty cool too. So. Yeah, you know, it's a really, really cool thing. And of course, Angel was really big in Japan too, so they were down here when I had it.
I was going to ask about that too, because yesterday, as a matter of fact, I talked to Michael Schenker, and he was talking about the fact that he has done many of his latest live albums in Japan because he has such a following over there, and it seems like this style of music is just huge in Japan. Have you found that the Japanese audience is a lot more interested than in the U.S., or is just a much bigger fan base?
Well, you know, it's funny. Like when Angel first came out, you know, in Japan it was Aerosmith, Kiss, Queen, and us, and Cheap Trick were the biggest bands, and we went over to Japan and played over there, and it was like Beatlemania. I mean, I could tell you all kinds of crazy stories over there. When we went over there, it was just nuts. And we did 10 major cities over there, and it was all sold out. It was crazy. It was, like I said, we had to rent the whole two floors of the hotel and the high-rise hotels in Japan, because there would be thousands of kids just all over the place down there waiting to see us and stuff, you know. And we had 5 bodyguards apiece because we couldn't go anywhere without being mobbed and our hair being pulled out and everything else. But I think that's because rock and roll was an import in Japan. You know, it hadn't started there, you know, so it was something that they craved because they didn't really have any of their own rock and roll acts, so to speak, you know, back then. And it was an import, and it's just like it was in Russia, you know, and in a lot of places, you know, rock and roll was something nobody had really ever heard, and they were dying to hear it. So, you know, they just really loved their rock acts, and we were one of those, happened to be one of those bands that the Japanese just really loved, you know. Because I guess it's because of our image too, you know, and music, of course, but also our image too as well, you know, was something they could really latch on to, you know. And so, you know, it was really cool. And I suppose to this day it's even like that, you know. I know the Japanese get into all kinds of stuff now. I mean, I've seen them into rap music and anything else, you know, but I just think that they just appreciate, you know, music in general, I guess, you know, and that's what's really cool about it. And they love their rock and roll, so more power to them. I love them for that.
I think they like their rock and roll, and they also seem to be very, very heavily into any kind of guitar-based rock and roll, and that goes anywhere from the 60s guitar group, The Ventures, all the way up to hard rock, because I know The Ventures are huge over there, too.
Yeah, well, I love the Ventures. That's how I cut my teeth on the Ventures, and of course, and all the British blues guitar players like Beck Clapton, Page Hendricks, and all those kind of guys. That's where I cut my teeth. So that's really where I'm at. You know, I'm a blues player, and of course, the first songs I ever learned were the Ventures, "Walk Don't Run," and "Perfidia," and all those songs. Now I still play those songs to this day. You know, I'm some more I'll pop up and I'll play it. You know. And those were great tunes, you know. I remember that's when I first saw the Fender Stratocasters, when I saw the Ventures, you know, and I thought, wow, cool guitar, what is that, you know. But yeah, I guess, and there's a lot of good Japanese guitar players too, actually, you know. They picked up on it too themselves, you know. They can, you know, the Japanese are really cool because they're just so innovative in themselves, you know what I mean, and they're so focused in what they do, and that you know, so there are a lot of good Japanese guitar players out there too. I have a lot of Japanese fans on my Facebook official Punky Meadows fan page on there, and they just love the band, love me and everything else, and they're always leaving really nice comments and stuff. So Japanese are cool people. I dig them. They're really neat.
So you got together with Danny Aniello, and you wrote new music. You were able to get the recording contract fairly easy. The next step was putting together a band. How hard was that to go out and find a brand new set of musicians to play with?
Well, actually, Bobby Pantella, who was a drummer, he's actually in a band called Monster Magnet. But they only tour about once a year, and they tour in Europe mostly. And so he actually had the recording studio where we did, and he's friends with Danny. Danny knew Bobby, so you know, I talked to Bobby on the phone, and we discussed how we wanted to do things, you know, and how, you know, my concerns about doing, because recording is different nowadays than it was when I was an Angel. You know, you don't. When we used to record, we would do the basic tracks, and we would all get in the same room together, you know, with the amps and drums and the guitars and bass and stuff. We would sit down and we would, you know, do take after take till we finally got a good take that we felt that was, you know, had a good vibe and that was tight and that sort of thing. But nowadays, the way you do it is you know, I play to a click track with a song. I just play to a click track with a scratch rhythm guitar, and then after I'm done with that, then Bobby comes on and puts the drums on. He plays along with that because you have to play with click tracks now because you got to stay at perfect timing because of Pro Tools and all the way that recording is done nowadays, and so you can copy and paste and all that kind of stuff, which was not like that back in the day, you know. So I was concerned about that because I said, well, dude, you know, I mean, I'm used to getting a good vibe with the guys in the band and stuff, and you know, and you know, making sure that we're tight and the music gels and sounds really good. You know, what if I want to slow down for the tempo for a minute? Because sometimes, you know, you retard things in songs for a certain effect. You know, like an ending can slow down and slow down and slow down. You know, so he said, well, don't worry about that. We'll fix that. We'll take care of that. So I said, okay, I tried it. So I went up there and I tried it, and sure enough, it came out great. I mean, it was, you know, well, Felix was playing on the record, so Felix was already an Angel. He was my first choice because Felix is one of the best bass players ever out there. I mean, Felix can play anything. You know, he can play funk, jazz, soul, country, rock, blues, everything. Felix is a really talented musician. He's a good keyboard player and also a good singer too. So he was my first choice as far as bass goes. So you know, so we had Bobby playing drums, and then we had Felix, of course. And then we were auditioning for singers because we wanted to find a singer that was good. We got a lot of people sending tapes in and that sort of thing, sending them their resumes in, and there was a lot of good singers. But I didn't want an 80s sounding singer. You know, I wanted something that was more of a 70s sounding kind of thing, but also that had a modern feel to it too. You know, a touch to it too. Because I wanted to give the fans what they wanted, but at the same time, you know, I wanted to sound fresh and have a modern feel to it too. Which is a lot of people have said that this album has a, you know, it has that the big rock feel of the 70s and stuff, but it still has a modern feel to it as well. So I got a lot of singers that came in, but I did, you know, and they were good. They were good singers and stuff, but none of them hit me right. And then we got Chandler, and I heard his tape, and even though I heard his tape, he was singing kind of heavy metal stuff that I'm not that crazy about. You know, where the singer just sings really in the stratosphere up there real high and doesn't do a lot of stuff. But he said a couple other things. Him playing acoustic guitar with a couple kids, and he was singing some really nice stuff, some melodic stuff. I thought, wow, I like the way this guy sounds. So we gave him a straight shooter and took him in the studio and let him record that. And after I heard that, I said, this is the guy. I mean, he's perfect. You know, he's got that soulful voice. He can sing very melodic, and he can sing anything. You know, Chandler is just a natural singer, and he's just really, really is good. So we had our guy, and once we had Chandler, then Chandler was friends with Charlie, the keyboard player, and when Charlie heard we were auditioning keyboards, he said, dude, you got to get me into that, because he says, I know every Angel song there is. And we thought, oh, wow, okay, this guy, that sounds cool. It's kind of a no-brainer. So he sent us a couple of tapes, and we said, great, he sounds great. So then I went up there. First we did the basic tracks, Danny, Felix, and Bobby, and myself. We did the basic tracks, and I came back down here. Then Danny flew down here, and we put all the guitar tracks on down here in Charlotte. And then I flew back up to Jersey, and we did all the vocals, and we did the keyboard parts first. And then came back down to Charlotte again. Then we went back up and did all the vocals at CDs, and then we did the mixing too. And then we were done, and it just came out great. And, you know, so we were pretty excited about it. And then we finally got to start mixing. Then we were really realizing how good the album is sounding, you know, and how everybody's performance was really, really excellent on the album. So it was exciting. And then when I finally got to play it back in my car, you know, that's where I do all my testing out, you know, to how things sound. Sounded great. I was really pleased. So that's how it went.
I understand that Felix is kind of questionable for your upcoming tour because he has to have some medical things done. Is everything okay with him at the moment?
Yeah, he's okay now. He had to have an operation, but he's fine now. It's just that he's healing up still. He needs a little more time. Hopefully we're going to have him for the East Coast gigs. You know, he just had some things he had to take care of, but he's actually 100% now as far as, you know, his health is, and he's all better. It's just that this is taking some time to heal up. He needs to rest up some. He can't do certain things yet. So, but he's excited to play again, and he's feeling like a new man. So that's I'm so happy about that. You know, his health comes first, of course. You know what I mean?
Oh, definitely. How did you first get interested in music and specifically in playing guitar?
Well, you know, when I was a kid, I first saw Elvis Presley, of course. I got in trouble because this older kid took me to this movie theater when I was just a kid, baby, you know, and I saw Elvis Presley's King Creole or something like this, King Creole, and I was mesmerized, and I got in trouble because my parents thought I was lost or I was stolen or something, and they finally found me, and the police were looking for me, and there's actually an article in the paper about Punky. It has a picture of me sleeping with like a little crew cut and stuff, you know, just a kid and sleeping in bed. And they said something about some Punky Meadows, the mystique of something in rock and roll and child ears or something like that. And it's a newspaper clipping. And so I saw Elvis, and of course after that, you know, I wanted to comb my hair like Elvis, keep my upper lip sticking up all the time, and trying to sing like Elvis and that sort of thing, you know. And then of course, I picked the guitar when I was about, like, I guess maybe 13 or 14, I guess. And I got my first little crappy acoustic guitar. I remember I went to play Peter Gunn on the top string with my thumb. I said, Dad, listen to this. No, you know. And my dad said, that's really good, son. If you can learn to play some more songs, I'll get you, you know, I'll buy you a better guitar. So, you know, I practiced, and that guitar was really cheap. It was hard to play, but I know there's some songs. Then my dad finally took me to a pawn shop, and we went up there, and I got a cheap Kent guitar, electric guitar, but I remember that it was the coolest guitar ever. It smelled like cherry when I opened the case up, and it was just so neat. And then I started learning adventure songs. Then I started learning Bonanza and Twilight Zone and all the TV theme songs, you know what I mean? I Walked on a Run and Baby Elephant Walk, I mean, all those kind of songs, you know, which is fun, you know. So, and I learned Golden Wildwood Flowery, country songs, you know, like I think I started picking right away. Because, you know, I lived in D.C., and of course there's Maryland, Virginia surrounded us, so you have a lot of country influences too. So, you know, I started playing guitar, and then when the Beatles came out, of course, you know, everything changed for everybody, you know. Then that was, you know, I had Beatlemania like everybody else, and that's all I wanted to do was play guitar and write. I was even writing songs back then when I was just a kid, when I was 14, you know, 15, that sort of thing.
You must have picked it up fairly quickly, though, because before you were out of high school, let's put it that way, you were in the Cherry People, and you actually had a regional hit and were on shows like American Bandstand. So that was a fairly short amount of time to actually pick up guitar and get good at it.
Yeah, I was pretty good at it. I mean, I was really focused too. You know, I'm pretty. You know, I get really focused when I get tunnel vision when I really get into something. You know, but yeah, you know, in fact, before the Cherry People, we were called the English Setters because we were the whole English invasion thing. You know, and our very first show was at junior high school at the Spring Festival. You know, we all wore white band-on shirts and black peg pants and Beatle boots. We had our little Beatle haircuts, and we all played through one Silvertone amp. We had all the guitars plugged into one Silvertone amp, Sears Silvertone amp, and we played at the auditorium there, and all the girls started screaming and going crazy. And I remember I sang "Boys" from the Beatles, and we did "Stop in the Name of Love," and we did some other Beatles songs too. And the girls were screaming, and I was like, "Wow, this is so cool!" So I knew that's what I wanted to do. And so the English Setters eventually became the Cherry People, and we finally started getting some. And we would go to Georgetown, which was like Greenwich Village in New York, and we would go there, and we were like 16, and we would play in nightclubs because the people loved us. But then the cops, the ABC would raid the place, and we had to run out of the place and hide upstairs in the roof and wait for them to leave, and then the club owner would throw us out for a couple of weeks and bring us back because we were underage. And so we got our chops down doing that, and then Summer of Love, we wanted to make it big, so we went up to New York. So we knew we couldn't do it in D.C., so we all decided to get in a cheap car and go to New York City, and we landed a gig at the Cafe Wah in the Village where actually I saw Jimi Hendrix right before he was Jimi Hendrix. He was Jimmy James and the Blue Flames. And we played the Cafe Wah there, and then, of course, this manager, Ron Hafkin, saw us and thought we were like the Monkees, you know, it was so cute and that kind of thing. And we were playing all the Sgt. Peppers, you know, in the Cafe Wah, and so they signed us to a record deal on Heritage Records, subsidiary of MGM, with, what was his name? His last name was Ross. Anyway, so and then we recorded that album, but it was all studio players, musicians that played on it, except for one song. And we did all the singing on it, so we were like the Monkees kind of thing, you know. And that was a Cherry People thing. And then, of course, that we had the single. We went up to California, and we were on American Bandstand with Dick Clark and all that kind of thing. But then what happened was, you know, and we did some little tours around California and New York and things like that. And then we came back, and that's when we went back to play in the Cafe One. That's when I saw Jimi Hendrix, and he was actually Jimmy James, and I just flipped out when I saw that, and I said, "Wow, man, that's what I want to do. I don't want to be the Monkees. I want to be Hendrix," you know. And so we kind of left that whole scene and went back to Washington D.C., where we knew we could get work, and we became house bands for like 3 years straight. We'd play in the same bar, and every night we would play, you know, 5-6 sets, you know, a night, and we got our chops down. We started writing a lot of our own songs, and we just got better and better and tighter and tighter, and so the Cherry People kind of just stayed there, and that's, you know, how I really learned to play, really, you know. And I'd go to after we'd play at the club till 2 o'clock at night. I'd go to after blues clubs in the black neighborhoods down there where they had open night mic, and you can come and sit in with these blues players, and you had to really, you know, kind of be brave, because those cats could play circles around you, and they would teach you about the blues, you know. And that's all I wanted to do was learn to play blues, because that's where it was at, you know what I mean. And I'd get there and play, and they would give me all this encouragement and stuff, you know. So then from the Cherry People playing all those nightclubs and stuff, I met Greg Giuffria. He came up to I was playing at the Bayou in Washington D.C., and he came up there and saw me on stage, and we met and we hit it off. You know, we said, well, let's put a band together. So I left the Cherry People, went down to Biloxi, Mississippi, where he lived, and he had a band down there. But I didn't like that band. I didn't like it at all. So I left there and went from there and went to Boston with Mickey Jones, and we put together Daddy Warbucks, which became Bux. And Ralph Moore was a singer in that, and he actually went on to sing with Joe Perry later on and Savoy Brown, but Ralph Moore was a singer in that, so we put Bux together. We did an album on Capitol Records with that, and then we wound up going back to D.C. again, because I could always get work there because of my reputation there, and so we went back to D.C. to play again and make money. And of course, we had lines around the block, and we played there at a club called Bogies for about 2 years, and then Greg showed up again and saw Mickey and I. We said, well, let's put a band together again. And this time we put together Angel. We put it upstairs in this loft in the club that we worked at. And so we put Angel together. It was just Mickey, Greg, and I. We started writing songs up there. Then we auditioned. We all looked at a singer, but then we saw Barry Brandt. And we thought he was the drummer. We didn't like the singer. We saw Barry Brandt. We brought Barry in, and then we went and saw, and Mickey knew Frank, and then we got Frank, and then from Frank, then we put Angel together. Then we showcased ourselves down at the club in Bogies, and people went crazy because Angel was way ahead of its time at that time. And actually, Kiss came in one night, and they'd been playing at the Capitol Center down there. And they saw us and they freaked out. And Gene and Paul and Ace, they came up to us and said, man, you guys are fucking awesome. He said, glitter hits DC, because before that, everybody was wearing jeans and T-shirts, and we were just really all glittered out and all that kind of stuff. And so Gene loved it. And Gene, I remember I used to do this pose where I'd hold my hand up over my head and point to my guitar neck and play with one hand. And Gene made that same pose and said, Punky, this classic, so. And that's kind of how we got one of the reasons how we got our record with Casablanca was because Kiss thought we were so great, and then we started bidding more with managers coming down to Bogies to see Angel, and we started bidding more. Everybody wants to sign with them. We wound up going out. Lieber and Krebs, of course, wants to sign with them, who managed Aerosmith and AC/DC. And Lieber and David Krebs was a friend of mine. I had met him when I was doing the Daddy Warbucks album, the Bucks album, and he wanted Mickey and I to play with the New York Dolls. And we said, hey, listen, we have a new band called Angel. Come and see Angel. So he loved Angel when he saw us. He said, we did a conference call with him on the phone. He said, if you guys don't sign with Lieber and Krebs, it's just a mental masturbation. So I wanted to sign with David because I knew what David could do, but the other guys wanted to go to California, so we wound up signing the Toby organizations. We moved up to California. Then we got a record deal with Casablanca out there, and kind of the way that happened, we were shopping a deal, and our manager said, there's this guy Neil Bogart. He's got a new record company called Casablanca, and Kiss is on that record label. Why don't we see if he'd be interested? So we said, yeah, let's check it out. So our manager calls Neil Bogart at Casablanca and says, hey, I got this band called Angel. They're really good. Kiss has seen them and really thinks they're great. Would you like to see it? Would you like them to audition for you? And Neil said, well, I'll tell you what, Kiss is playing in Anaheim in a couple of weeks. I'll have Angel open up for them, and that way I can check the band out and see what they're like. And he says, let me call Gene, and I'll call you back. So we hang up, and then Neil Bogart calls back about 10 minutes later and says, I'll tell you what, I'll sign the band sight unseen, because Gene Simmons says under no circumstances will Angel ever open for Kiss. So Neil, so he said he was signing the band sight unseen. So, but we did play for him anyway because we wanted to play for him. So we went to like this little rehearsal hall, and he came down. He just fell in love with the band and freaked out. So he signed us to a big record deal. And of course, Gene and I, Kiss and I, we would cross paths all the time on the road and stuff. And we were all friends and dug each other and stuff. And so it was a great time. Really cool.
Whose idea was it? I mean, the way I have always heard was that you were kind of the antithesis of Kiss at Casablanca. They were dressed in black. You guys were all dressed in white and so forth. Where did that come from?
That came from Casablanca and our manager, too. I mean, it was kind of, I guess it was a no-brainer. We were more like, kind of glammed out, like, I like the New York Dolls kind of look, because we thought that was really cool, because I felt before the New York Dolls really was dressed, like I said, in holy jeans and T-shirts, you know what I mean? And it was just kind of boring. And when the New York Dolls came out, it was like everything was in color all of a sudden, and it was just so cool. And so we were dressed more like that, but then, because of the name Angel, that name came about because I was a big Hendrix fan, of course, and I have a white Strat, and I named my white Strat Angel after the song from Hendrix, Angel. And so that's how we named it Angel. But of course, it was, I guess, a no-brainer when the name was Angel. Of course, Angel and white, and because we're Angel, and Kiss is in black. So that was represented to us. We thought, yeah, that sounds like a pretty cool idea. So we went into the studio, took some pictures, and we had some costumes made and that sort of thing. And then from there, everybody started brainstorming about what kind of show we should do, and then we would do illusions, and because that's when the whole big stage shows were starting to happen. Of course, Kiss, and Alice Cooper started all that stuff, but we were right there on their coattails, so that was the thing to do. So we put together the big show with the illusions and the whole thing, and so it was cool. We were dressed in white. It was neat. I always design all my own costumes, and I just have the seamstress make them, for me. Yeah, it was cool. We dug it. It's a funny thing because at one point, we felt we were being kind of typecast and on white. So we did our very last, and we wanted to kind of break away from that. So we did our very last tour out of costume and just in rock and roll clothes or whatever. And I remember a lot of the fans were disappointed, about that. So I felt bad. And then later on, like I said, after it was all said and done and over with, when I looked at Facebook again, when I first came back to Facebook and I saw all these people posting these pictures of us on stage playing, I really saw how cool it really looks. I really never had a chance to see that because I was on stage playing. And I did see how cool the whole white thing was, and it was really awesome. I mean, it had a magical look to it, and it was just really, really cool. So,
what eventually led to the breakup of Angel? You did, I think, 5 studio albums before you ended up splitting up.
Let me see. We did Angel, Hell of Band, On Earth, White Hot, Sinful, and then the live album. Double live album too, so that's actually 6. Well, what happened was Casablanca. We had some meetings with Neil and Neil. We were in the Casablanca for $1.6 million, and Neil was always loves to support us. And he said, listen, man, you guys are gonna, you're gonna win the war. Don't worry, I'm gonna write that debt off actually. And so that was cool. We were gonna do our next. We were getting ready to do the live album. And then Neil Bogart, unfortunately, got the axe from Casablanca for, they said, misappropriation of funds. And so, he got the axe. And after that happened to him, Casablanca just fell apart. I mean, Casablanca was the soul and heart of Neil Bogart. I mean, it was his company. He started it, And he became the golden boy of Hollywood from he started that company with, in debt with his credit cards and had Johnny Carson album out, didn't do anything. And then, he had kids and they didn't break for a long time. And then finally he got Donna Summer too. And they started the whole disco thing. Next thing, and then exploded, and of course then his Kiss exploded, and so he became the golden boy of Hollywood. But anyway, he got the axe. And once that happened, Casablanca fell apart. It was just run by a bunch of college kids, and they weren't doing anything in there. And we put the live down mouth. He didn't really promote it or anything like that. And so we kind of just drifted apart. We just stopped, doing anything with Casablanca because they weren't doing anything for us. And in the meantime, we couldn't do anything with any other companies, so we were still under contract with Casablanca. So we kind of split it off. Greg and I went in one direction and did some things, some revamped Angels and Frank and did some other things, and stuff like that. And then it just kind of fizzled out, because of that. It wasn't like we didn't really break up because we didn't like each other. It's just that, our hands were tied. We couldn't do anything. We wanted to do something, so we disbanded Angels so we could all go off and do other things. And that's what happened with that, unfortunately.
You have these 6 or 8 dates set up now for spring, and what plans do you have as far as further touring?
We're getting more dates. We have a booking agent. They're setting up more dates for us now. So we're gonna. I'd like to try to go down the East Coast too, down like the Baltimore, D.C. area, and do some southern states down here too, and further up New York. Which do a big East Coast tour, then maybe go back out west again. We'd like to do that. So in the Midwest, we want to hit the Midwest because of course everybody's been dying for us to come to the Midwest because St. Louis, places like that. Angel was huge, and I love Angel there. So we want to get some Midwest gigs. So we'll do that. We also were playing at this big Texas Jam in July too, with like one of those 2-3 day festival things. So we're going to be doing that. So yeah, we have a lot of things lined up. We're just getting everything pulled together now because during the holiday, nobody really goes out and plays because everybody's doing the holiday thing, So
no, the industry has definitely become summer festivals and tours, and that's where most of the money is in touring now.
Exactly. Yeah. The record industry has changed. It's a whole different ball game now. So we get there and play. And so yeah, like you said, it's the spring and summer. It's when when the weather's good and people are out. Feeling good. So we're setting ourselves up for all that kind of stuff now.
How about a follow-up album for Fallen Angel? Any plans yet?
Yeah, I'm a pretty prolific songwriter, and so is Danny, and I write songs. I have a lot of really, really great songs now that I really can't wait to get down on tape or whatever it's on the computer nowadays, I guess. But, so I'm writing all the time, and then Danny and I'll call Danny on the phone and say, hey, check this out. And he'll say, cool, man, I dig that, and he'll do the same thing to me. And so we're going to, ride this out now for this year, and then hopefully by next year, beginning of next year, we'll go in the studio and start doing another record. I can't wait to do that. So I love recording. Recording is one of my most favorite things ever because it's just fun to create, layer. Because, you'll have this, you'll plant this seed and have this song. I'll hear it all in my head where I want everything to do, and then when you actually get in and do it, you start layering and then adding the instruments, and then and then it comes to life, and then it sounds even better than you thought it was going to sound. And because once the singer and everybody else puts their parts in there too, and they add too, you know what I mean, to it. Then you go, wow, that's really sounds cool, man. I'm really happy with that. So I can't wait to record again. I love doing that kind of stuff.
Well, it's great to have you back in the music world after being away for so long, and I do wish you the best of luck on the tour. this coming up, I believe it's March and April.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Roger. It's been my pleasure. I hope to see you. Maybe you come to one of our shows sometime and check us out. I'd love to meet you in person.
That would be great. I appreciate that. Good luck with everything, and thank you so much for talking. Punky Meadows' album, Fallen Angel, is available now. We'll be back soon with more editions of the VVN Music Podcast, including talks with Cindy Lee Berryhill, Michael Schenker, and Steve Hackett. Remember that you can hear the VVN Music Podcast via iHeartRadio, YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, Libsyn, and the VVN Music website. For the latest news on the veteran artists of rock, pop, soul, country, folk, and blues, go to vvnmusic.com. If you have any comments or questions about the website or this podcast, please send them to vvnnetwork@gmail.com. Our theme music is performed by Yahar. This program was recorded on February 27th, 2017. The VVN Music Podcast is a production of the VVN Network, copyright 2017.